after cautioning them, the car did give a little bit of a kick over and threw out about a half a pint of grease all over a fellow's white flannel suit. He didn't stop to try to brush it off there, but he run for the surf and against batting it with water. But that settled him. He kept out the way. Of course, I was sorry to see it happen, but it was amusing for the crowd that was around.
Yeah. Then there was another time, I think you told me, Fred, in the back shop here, when the fellow was crouching down behind the car, and he was asking you all sorts of foolish questions, and you were in a hurry to get it done. How'd you get rid of him?
Well, the fellow was working on the car. I told him to put the pilot out. When he put the pilot out, I had him screw the nozzle up again, and I opened the main fire to get a good charge of gas in there. And I told the fellow to just put the match in to light the pilot again. He wanted to know if I wanted to blow his head off. I'd keep your head out of the way. But he put it on, and there was an explosion there. This fellow tried to get up, but when getting up, he rolled on his back, and he rolled the length of the floor before he got up and run to the end of the building as fast as he could go.
People are still worried about it. I remember driving my car up to the meet at Peterborough one day, and they all crowded around when my burner backfired and black smoke started coming out. Did people used to have to carry fire extinguishers to prevent those fires, Fred, or did they just let them burn up?
Why, lots of them carry the fire extinguishers, but I never knew of a Stanley burning up. It got to such a, I've seen them get to a certain point where the flames would heat up around their steam pipe or steam connection, and that would burst and put the whole thing out.
What was the highest production that Stanley's ever made? It was along about 1908, wasn't it, Fred?
I wouldn't be certain, but I think that was somewhere around their peak.
Why was it that they didn't continue their popularity? Was it because Ford came in with his Model T about that time and was more reliable than the Stanleys, or didn't they advertise enough? What would you say?
Well, it was popular enough, but they didn't do any advertising. Stanley claimed that they, never mind the advertising, would take the money that they would advertise and put it into the car.
Why was it took so long to fire it up? Couldn't they have made a better type of burner to get steam up more quickly and compete with the gasoline car? I understood that they figured that there was a more reliable boiler. Of course, White came out with a different type of boiler, a flash boiler, and then Durr came out. But Stanley never seemed to be interested in those improvements.
I have one thought on that subject. My understanding is that during the years of their production, they produced at peak capacity for many years. They didn't have to advertise, and they had a waiting list for their product. And in any factory or any manufacturing firm, if there isn't much competition for a product, well, there's very little desire to improve it. And I suspect that that's why they just coasted along as they were.
Have you anything to say on that, Fred?
No, I think Frank's about right on that.
Then later on, when the need for keeping up with the competition arose, why some changes were made, such as the condenser and other changes that Mr. Ellis is going to mention.
Well, I wasn't so much thinking of that as to go back to the question about firing up and getting started. Is it true that in the old days they used to leave the pilots on overnight continuously and had no trouble?
Why, yes, you could leave your pilot going up overnight. That there's a low pressure. It wouldn't be safe for the vaporizer to let too high a pressure on the pilot. It would carbon up too quick. But by leaving a medium pilot on there, why, it'll carry him over the night, and we'd have very little trouble in getting started in the morning.
Would you think that the gasoline that they used then was much better than anything we can get for pilots now, and therefore they didn't carbonize up as much as sometimes they do now?
Well, the gasoline that we got at that time was perfectly good, and it didn't give us any trouble. But in order to get a pilot now, you would have to get the all white gasoline. There's none of this coloring or substance they put in today.
We might mention at this time, Fred Marriott has in his safe a list of practically every Stanley that was delivered from the factory from 1904 until the firm went out of business, with the serial numbers of the car. And in many, many cases, Fred has had letters from people, and he has been able to identify the year that their car was built and delivered from the factory. Fred, where are some of the places you've had letters from in the last few years? You've had letters from all over the country.
I've had letters from about every state in the Union, you might say, in regard to the numbers and the model of the car, which I could give them, provided they give me the maker's number. That's the only way I would have to identify the car.
Do you have any requests from England? I understand there are still quite a few Stanleys around England, which always seems strange to me that they would want to import them over there. Have you ever been over there to service them, Fred?
I've been over there, but never over to service them. They've got quite a few, and they're through England. And I was over there in 1906. But I never went over there for any part of it except for a good time and vacation.
Fred, were the Stanleys were the Stanleys assembled in England, or were they all assembled here and shipped over there? I have seen pictures of English Stanleys, and somehow they look different than our Stanleys over here.
All cars that was delivered from this, assembled, it was here at the Stanley plant. I never knew of any cars being shipped away or being assembled in any other place.
Well, did they had American bodies and everything? A straight American car.
Straight American car, all through bodies.
Well, Fred, if you had to pick out one particular Stanley model of any year, any type, what would you say was the best all-round performing Stanley that they ever made?
Well, that's the kind of thing, the best performance Stanley for me was a Model H Roadster. I'd sooner drive that than any car that any model they ever made.
Well, what was the Model H? Can you describe it? What kind of a Stanley was it?
What year?
Well, the Model H was a 20 horsepower and it was geared 1-to-1, and it was the fastest thing I ever drove on the street.
How fast would it go, Fred?
Well, it should go about a 60-mile rotor, which was pretty fast at that time.
In other words, it could hold 60 miles an hour and not lose steam pressure.
And not lose steam unless it was very hilly. Of course, I'll take it on the roads we got today, why, it'd be a cinch.
You must have had a lot of fun having other cars try to pass you and then leave them behind in your dust.
They did. When they found out it was a 20, I told them it was a 20 horse, they said they were going to buy a 4 horse for their wives.
The time has almost arrived for our departure from Fred Marriott's office, and we want to thank him for allowing us to come and for his telling us all the interesting experiences. And we are now going to have a very entertaining experience. Mr. Ellis has kindly asked all of us here if we would like to take a ride with him in his Stanley. And I haven't heard anyone say no. How about it, Fred? Would you like to go around the block in the Stanley, too?
Well, I'm always glad to get in the Stanley and go any distance.
Well, in that case, we'll take a picture of you in the Stanley, or standing beside it anyway, so that everyone at the steam car meet will be able to see it, and they'll realize what a good time we had here today.